is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes,
He's going for it.
Yes! Oh my goal! What a goal!
And that will do it. One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and this is the big one this week. National television for the Philadelphia Union as they take on NYCFC for the first time at Subaru Park since losing in the Eastern Conference Finals last season 2-1. It's a battle between first and third in the Eastern Conference this season, with New York City FC holding a 1-point lead with a game in hand. And you've got the best defensive teams in MLS going at it this weekend. And I'd be shocked if this game ends scoreless, because you have a New York City team that has been on fire in the second half, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. If you guys have been paying attention on social media, I've been pulling up New York City stats. And then you have the Union, who have not been hot offensively in the second half. And we'll dive into all of that stuff here in a little bit. But returning back to the podcast is the host of the Coaching Academy on Sirius XM FC, On Frame, and Soccer in the City weekly podcast, and current NYCFC radio broadcast play-by-play, Glenn Crooks. Glenn, thanks for coming back on. How are you doing?
All right, Todd. Good. I mean, if I were able to talk to Jim Curtin, I'd say, what's going on with all these ties?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure he's been asked about that at some point.
Oh, yeah. Too much. I feel like he's getting quite annoyed, because he mentioned it in his opening statements and then got asked about it right again. And yeah, Jim Curtin's been getting just killed by the media with questions on all the draws that the Union are having, why so many blown leads. And if we see another one, the fans, Jim Curtin, the players, they might lose it this weekend. So hopefully,
well, part of it, yeah, but only one loss in 15 matches. That's not bad either. So I don't think they should go. You shouldn't be too hard on them.
For sure. And I mean, one loss, like you said, against Toronto. But at the same time, too, it's like, man, you're at home. You have 5 draws at home. You haven't done that since 2014, when they had 8 that season. So it's like, you expect them to get all 3 points at Subaru Park, but it's not been the case this season with only 3 wins. And, 2 of those wins were against San Jose and Charlotte. Charlotte's a brand new team, and then San Jose, they're coming into a cold climate. That game was, I think, 18 degrees by the time that the game kicked off, and so their bodies weren't used to the cold climate and everything. And you had everything with Mateus Almeida, with Willie Stay, Willie Go. He eventually gets fired, so now San Jose's turning it around. But yeah, the Union haven't looked too convincing, in my opinion, at Subaru
Well,
Park.
maybe the new grass will help out.
Yeah. Let's hope so for the Union's sake. But New York City, they took on New York Redbulls last night in the U.S. Open Cup, and we'll talk about their weekend game against Colorado Rapids. But yeah, last night could not have been more painful for New York City fans, as they lost that game 3-0 against New York Redbulls. And I think, for Union fans, myself included, I was a little bit surprised to see NYC just put out most of their starting 11 minus Sean Johnson, and they went for it last night. They had opportunities to take the lead, but New York Red Bulls came out there and were able to capitalize first with Lewis Morgan. And as the game went on in the second half, Andrade got that stupid red card, I should add. And yeah, when you're down to 10 men playing against New York Red Bulls, it's always a tough ask.
Yeah, there's one thing. No, the result was poor, but as far as putting out a strong team, both teams did, but that was not surprising, really. And there was a discussion. Nick Cushing wasn't certain, the new head coach. He wasn't certain how he was going to do the Sean Johnson, Luis Barraza thing in goal, and he told me that he was not necessarily going to leave it up to Rob Vertugi, the goalkeeper coach, but essentially, get his opinion on it and probably go that way. So obviously the opinion was, let's stay with Barraza. And you can't say that any of the goals were Barraza's fault. And he also made a couple of good saves along the way. So look, the best team won last night. And I don't think you can really, question that or doubt that. But there are moments, games turn on moments, and there is no VAR in the U.S. Open Cup. There's discussions about having it in the semifinals and maybe the final. and a lot of it has to do with finances. I learned a lot today, and U.S. Soccer has contacted pro referees and their VAR capabilities, and there's a cost involved. So there's all this discussion going on to see whether the semis or finals will have it. But Sean Nealis actually gave Taty Castellanos in the area. Castellanos got past him, the New York City center back, and New York Red Bull center back, and gave him a two-arm shove in the back. Castellanos tumbled over. There was no call from the referee. My color analyst, Matty Lawrence, he honestly, and he's a former pro player. He's a guy that never gets it wrong, and he's not a homer. He'll call it either way. He doesn't care. And he saw it live. We both did, like, wow, that really looked like a penalty. Then he saw the replay 3 times, and it was like, that's 100% a penalty in the area. But the referee did see it clearly, and there's no video review, and you also assume that Castellanos makes the penalty, and you can't assume that. But let's just say it's 1-0 at that point in the game, midway through the first half. Maybe the game changes a little bit. Who knows? But the lack of discipline, Thiago with a red card, you're right. It was silly. It was stupid. It was all the words you could come up with. If you headbutt somebody, you're going to get ejected. That's that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then you had the scrimmage at the end of the game. So, like, you guys were obviously in the stadium. You got to see it all unfold live. And then the TV cameras, like, I feel like they just panned to that way too late. So you didn't get to see who started that. You just see Cornell going at it with New York City. You see Cornell then go after Taty, go after Sean Johnson. Yeah, it didn't look like a good look. And the one thing you can definitely tell for sure is that these two teams have bad blood against each other. They cannot stand each other for the first Hudson River Derby of the season in the U.S. Open Cup. But you're right. On the night, I mean, New York Redbulls were probably the better team. They capitalized on the chances. Breza came out with a good save in the off of Klamala, who was 1-on-1, and then Luquinhos was able to put it in the back of the net. But I want to talk about Sean Johnson real quick, because there's a lot of discussion that Greg Berhalter wants his goalkeeper playing week in, week out. And I know there's a lot of talk saying with fans, with other podcasts that I hear, where like, well, Mac Turner, he's not going to play every week in Arsenal. Zach Steffen, if he doesn't leave Man City, he's not playing every week. Ethan Horvath, who knows what's going to happen with him? Like, it's possible Sean Johnson, if Berhalter stays with his word, says, yeah, we want to have a goalkeeper that plays week in, week out. Could Sean Johnson start for the U.S. men's national team? I don't know. He's having a terrific season. Probably it's between him and Dane St. Clair, in my opinion, who are having the best season as goalkeepers. And I saw your MLS list. I got to give you props, too, for finally somebody giving Kai Wagner recognition as your left back.
He's on my team. Those guys, my starting 11 in the MLS All-Star game, those guys, they unquestionably, they're on my team. And as I put in my tweet, I'm really not. I've coached the game for a long time. And coaches oftentimes despise individual awards, especially on the collegiate level or youth levels, where you're dealing with less mature people who then they'll start talking about it. But even on the professional level, that happens. So the idea of individual awards is never. I'm not fond of it. It's really team awards. That's what we should talk about. So I put the best team out there to beat Liga MX All-Star. So that's what I've got out there. It includes what I feel are the top players at their positions as well. But if you look at it, it's a good team.
It is.
It's a good team.
That's one of the best teams that I've seen, and I'm not just saying that because you're on the podcast. It's like, man,
yes, you are.
Yeah, maybe, but now you get so many fans that are like, yeah, I'm gonna put in my starting 11 from my team and everything. Let's get my guys. Which I respect it, but yeah, I'm with you. Like when I voted,
Todd, I want to tell you this, and I didn't put this in. There's not enough characters in the tweet, but I found it very disappointing that when you go and when you're involved in the voting process, you go in, there's all these nominated players for each position. And the number of players and I don't know the nomination process. I assuming the clubs nominate the players to be there, but there were a high number of players that had maybe one start all year or a couple of starts or hadn't started at all. And it was insulting that those people are part of the list. So to me, that takes away from the process. That makes it more of a joke. And I know the fans are involved with this as well. It's, the fans are involved with the vote, which I like. It's just like, yeah, let's involve the fans. But let's not. let's call it what it is. It's not really an all-star game
It's
team.
not. It is 100% not. But just what are your thoughts on Sean Johnson? I mentioned that earlier. His season that he's having, didn't get the starting goal last night. I mean, he's up there, like I said, with Dane St. Clair, in my opinion, for 1A, 1B best goalkeepers in the league. And this might be Sean Johnson's best season he's had with New York City so far.
Well, I'll agree and disagree, but Sean Johnson's been the best goalkeeper at MLS since the midpoint of last year. From the halfway point last year through the playoffs, he was exceptional. And, I've watched him from the beginning at New York City, and there were times where he struggled in certain moments, and his distribution has improved, and that was a problem at some point. There was an issue with the number of saves that he was leaving in front of the goal to permit rebounds, and that's a real integral technique for a goalkeeper to be able to, when you make the save, and it's hard sometimes because it might be from close range and you're diving, but the importance of parrying the ball or pushing the ball outside of the frame of goal so that somebody can't just barrel in and finish the rebound is important. And I felt that's one area that Sean Johnson struggled in. Well, he's worked very hard in all aspects of his game with the keeper coach Rob Vartugin, who's a big part of that. And to me, he's unquestionable. Yeah, he's had a very good season, and he's had 8 shutouts. But you have to understand, in 2 of those shutouts, he didn't have to make a single save. In one of those shutouts, he only had to make 1 save, and it was like a ball that hopped 22 times before it got to him. And so, sometimes clean sheets are of the element of the team, not just the goalkeeper. But he's been very good. He's been the best keeper since the midpoint of last season in MLS. And I think he's shown in that match against Uruguay, and in that international period where that friendly was played. Those 2 friendlies, Morocco and Uruguay, were the ones that really were I think important, and he did well.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. But real quick, let's go ahead and talk about New York City's game against Colorado Rapids over the weekend, which ended 1-1. And I have a couple of things that I wrote down where I said, earlier on in this game, Colorado, they got in behind New York City center backs early on. But then as the game progressed, I thought New York City did a really good job just correcting not really giving Colorado that many opportunities to get in behind the 2 center backs. Taty, hits the post in the first half where, man, like, 9 out of 10 times, I feel like that goes in. I mean, he did everything perfect on that, but hit the wrong side of the woodwork and doesn't go in for him. Tyler Magno, in my opinion, you can say Maxi Morales was the best player in that game. I thought Tyler Magno, he looked super confident, taking players on 1v1. Last season, I feel like he was just finding his feet in the league. But as I watched New York City this season, each game he seems to get better and better. And like I said, just taking players on 1v1, had so much space on the far side of the left side of the field for New York City. I mean, he was getting in behind. He was terrific on the day. Colorado, for 90% of the match, I feel like they were very well organized. They played a high line with pressure. Like, as soon as New York City tried to play out of the back, Colorado was right there to shut them down. And New York City did a good job just playing out of the back, not going away from their game plan. The 1v1 battles between Michael Barrios and Collins, that was so entertaining to watch. And then the ball by Maxi Morales to Tallis. I mean, I don't know how you hit a ball that well. The control that Tallis had to bring that ball down, and then the volley. I mean, that's up there for one of the goals of the season so far. I know we're only 15 games in, 14 or 13 games in for New York City, but what a terrific play that was by New York City.
Yeah, and the way Colorado defended so well during the game, and then that one moment there, because that was really like that was like a training goal, where Morales had no pressure when he served the ball. Magno was in between the central defenders. They played a 3-back system, but he found his way, and he really, without pressure, just chest it, volley it, and it's something that you would see in training. But it was a wonderful finish by Magno. But Magno is also that one where Castellanos hit the post, the crossbar rather, in the first half. The ball that was played through was by Magno. I mean, he's an exceptional player, and you're right, he is getting more comfortable each time out. And it's just while it lasts, New York City supporters should just enjoy it and soak in every minute, because I don't think he's long for MLS. I think a lot of people are probably seeing what's going on, and he and he's a good kid, but he's only 19 years old, and he's getting better all the time. And I think he and Santi Rodriguez, along with Castellanos, you mentioned Maxi Morales, these guys are together. That quartet has been exceptional at times. But now they got to figure out, and teams get figured out. In New York City, they know that they like to combine and do things at the top of the area and work off each other. And Colorado did a good job of clogging the middle. The Red Bulls did a good job of both pressing at the right time and also making it difficult in the center of the park. So New York City's got to come up with more answers wide. And I think one thing you'll see under new coach Nick Cushing, I talked to him about this a little bit. Under Ronny Deila, he wanted his wings more inside, inverted. Like the left-footed guy would play on the right, the right-footed guy would play on the left, and they're always coming in. I think what you're going to see with Nick Cushing at times is he wants to see some more true wingers. And I think it might be a good time to introduce that, because that width, establishing that width, is going to be, I think, really important as New York City progresses through this season. But all that being said, they're top of the table. Philadelphia right on their heels, and I think we're in for a good one.
Yeah, I hope we are. But just sticking with, Talles Magno and the rest of the players that we just talked about, there's 10 players on this roster that are from South America when I count it, with 5 of them being from Brazil. And, we've seen MLS teams sign players from South America before, but I feel like we rarely see MLS teams buying top players from Brazil. And so I guess my question to you is it fair to say a lot of these players that are leaving top clubs in Brazil, coming to New York City, do you believe that they're coming to New York City in hopes of, getting the attention from Manchester City, or that they really believe that the steps from Brazil's top flight to MLS is going to get them attention to Europe?
Yeah, Ferran Soriano said this recently. He's the CEO of the City Football Group, and New York City FC is one of the 11 satellite teams within CFG. But I agree with him. He said, you take players in South America now, probably over the last 2 years specifically, and where they used to go maybe to play in maybe Holland or Belgium, or name the country is below the top 5 leagues, and it's they come to MLS because, first of all, it's a good life. They're going to make good money. And it's a league where the coaching is improved, so they're going to be developed by their coaches, and their teammates are good, and the league is ostensibly better. And I say that because I've seen some really poor performances in person this year for the opposition in particular. Maybe they just can't handle playing at Yankee Stadium. I don't know, but those is where I've seen RSL, Sporting KC, Montreal. I'm forgetting Columbus. I mean, to be honest with you, dismal performances by all 4 of those teams. And then you wonder, we hear about MLS being this league that's really striding, and those are only are those one-offs? You see Montreal and Columbus getting results now, and Inter Miami's another one that comes to mind. So I wonder where we're all at, but I'm circling your question there. The idea is South Americans are coming to MLS because it's better for them than maybe going to Turkey or wherever.
Yeah,
it works out financially. They might even make a little bit more money if they go into certain positions in certain leagues, but it's not always going to be about the money. And they see people from MLS, players from MLS, getting the opportunity to go abroad and cash in a little bit too. So the timing is right now. And for the Brazilians, Luquinhos for the Red Bulls last night. He was a key player, and you can see, what he's brought to the New York Red Bulls. So, there's Brazilians everywhere now in the league. So, and 5 of them for New York City, and only one of them, to be honest with you, Talles Magno. Everybody knew about him, and a lot of clubs were hoping that they could latch on to him. But the other guys, not so much. Gabriel Pereira, not really. Thiago, not so much. Eber, not at all. And Thiago Martins, he was at one of the City Football Group teams too in Japan, and that's where New York City discovered him. But that's the level there is just adequate. So people were not knocking down the door for Thiago Martins, and he's a designated player. He's a center back, and he's good. I don't think you're going to see him on the weekend because he got pretty severely hurt against on the weekend against Colorado and did not play last night. So we'll see.
So Chanel and Collins probably
I think
the
so.
two.
Yeah, I think that's what you'll see.
Well, New York, Philadelphia Union fans have seen plenty of Chanel in the past and everything, and him and Collins have made a decent partnership over the years. So I don't think New York City is going to lose too much if that is indeed the partnership they go with. But before we talk about Ronny Deila leaving and Nick Cushing taking over as the manager, since we're already on the topic of players, we might as well stay on this topic. Taty Castellanos, I mean, the rumors have been never ending. I mean, sporting director David Lee keeps telling the media that NYCFC haven't received an offer that they think is acceptable yet. They're still holding firm for $15 million. We've seen Leeds United, Nottingham Forest, Palmeiras in Brazil, Everton, Bologna, Newcastle United, all be linked with Taty, and yet he's still a New York City player. And this is a player who was one of the best and won the Golden Boot last year with New York City. Started slow, but now he started to find his feet again this season. Unfortunate, like we said, not to score a goal against Colorado. Could have potentially had a penalty kick against New York Redbulls, which 9 out of 10 times, if Taty does have the penalty, it's probably going to go in, and no VAR, so no penalty. But yeah, Taty, it blows my mind that he's still here in the leagues. A little bit similar to Kai Wagner with Philadelphia Union. We've heard rumors in the past that, oh yeah, he's going to go to Europe. This team wants him. This team wants him. I know Tom Berger said in January that Philadelphia Union turned down an offer from either Fulham or Brentford for $10 million for Kai Wagner. Now, I don't know if that was all $10 million up front. Was there incentives? But, you know, when I heard $10 million, $10
million.
That's a lot of money for Kai Wagner.
Cash in. But he's got that special quality, and but $10 million for Kai Wagner. If that's true, I'm going to say that's doubtful that they would turn down $10 million for Kai Wagner. That's my opinion.
No, I agree with you 100% because when I heard that, I was like, man, I would drive Kai Wagner right now to Philadelphia Airport and have him on the next plane to.
Even though you love
England.
him, right? You have to qualify
Absolutely.
that, even though you love him. Okay.
Exactly. It's like
there's little question that New York City FC is waiting for the right offer, and it hasn't been met yet. And I think they're going to be stubbornly persistent with making sure, and you just have to guess that it's 15 million plus, maybe between 15 and 16, somewhere in there before they will accept an offer. And Taty doesn't look the worse for wear. I mean, he trains the same way. He seems very happy. So I think there's a lot of communication there. I think ultimately, though, now that we're approaching the next window, if something doesn't happen, it could start adding to the tension. Everybody's human when it comes to this. We know he has a strong desire. He has stated it quite clearly. He has a strong desire to either go to River Plate, and they haven't been close to the proper offer, or Europe and River Plate, so that maybe his chances for the Argentinian national team are enhanced. Although if he goes to somewhere like Leeds and does well, I don't think that's going to prevent him from getting called in if he deserves it. So, I think he's I don't know if content's the right word, but he hasn't changed at all. He's the same guy. And that's good for New York City. And that's good for the league because he is something else.
Absolutely. I mean, this guy was pretty much an unknown when he joined MLS, and now everybody in the league knows who Taty Castellanos is, and he's a chippy player. And I know Philadelphia Union fans hate, that little bit of a temper, but I say go ahead and look at Jose Martinez. He's the same way, and there's nothing bad with a player on your team that can get under the skin of the opponents and everything, because might send the player off, just like we saw Taty and Jose Martinez a few years ago get Jose Martinez sent off. So
they'll do battle again because Taty ends up drifting into the midfield a little bit and airball challenges and all that. So he and Martinez, and they both love the physical nature of the sport, so they like mixing it up, and they're both very good players. So yeah, it's one of the areas that you look forward to. But New York City against the Red Bulls, they really they became very direct, and that's what the Red Bulls sometimes force you to be. And normally Taty is more successful as that guy that you can escape to by driving the ball deep and putting it to him as a target. And although he won a couple of those battles and knotted down a couple of headers or flicked them on that were pretty resourceful, The Nealis and Aaron Long and Tom Edwards, I think combined all did a pretty good job on them. I thought those three were really the key to the game last night that prevented New York City from really, getting much at all.
Yeah, I agreed 100%. But let's go ahead and turn the focus on Ronny Deila leaving to go to Standard Liège in Belgium. Nick Cushing takes over. But Ronny Deila, in his time against the Philadelphia Union in 6 matches, he was 2-3-1 in all competitions. We know he won MLS Cup in 2021. He had a 46-29-15 record as the head coach of New York City. But my question to you is, where would you rank Ronny in terms of the coaches at New York City? Take away winning MLS Cup, because I feel like, when we judge coaches or players, we look at, okay, how many times do they win MVP? How many times did they win the league? And I know you say you don't like talking about individual accolades, but for coaches and everything, I feel like people always look at how many titles coaches win. So where would you
put... you can't take away MLS Cup. I mean, Ronny Deila right now, if you're going to build a statue of the coach that's been most influential for New York City FC, the supporters are going to vote for Ronny Deila because he brought them the cup. So no matter how much they love Patrick Vieira or Dove Terron, Ronny Deila is the man. So yeah, Deila is the guy. And I like all three of those guys personally. I like Jason Kreis as well, but he was only here for a year. It was the only year they didn't go to the playoffs, their expansion season. So no statues for Jason Kreis. But if you're building one, it's Ronny Deila in front of Yankee Stadium or the new soccer stadium, whenever that comes in. Yeah. So
yeah, no. Any more updates on that? I totally forgot to write that down. I know they're building you guys a temporary home, I think, because New York Redbulls.
Nah, that's not happening.
It's not happening?
No, I know there's been a lot on Twitter. Well, I would doubt that it would happen. It's going to cost a lot of money to refurbish Randall's Island, is what you saw, which is in Queens. Ironically, that's when Pele, his first game as a member of the Cosmos, he stepped foot on Randall's Island at a field there. You've got to go on YouTube and find just Google or YouTube Pele's first match with Cosmos, sure. And it's a very cool thing. And you'll see Randall's Island there because that's where the game was played. But this is a facility that was that they're talking about, Icon Stadium. It was built for track and field. So already the field's only 68 yards wide. So they have to redo the whole thing and build into the track, which supposedly the city doesn't want to do because this thing was built as a track and field facility. So it sounds to me like, New York City could well have inquired about it, but it actually happening, it doesn't sound like it will. Now, the other story that came out regarding the permanent soccer stadium came from Chris Campbell, and he's a guy that writes for the Outfield. So if you tweet the Outfield, they cover everything New York City, and Chris has been probably the guy who has been most on top of the stadium situation, and he understands local government and all these intricacies. You read his articles, and I don't know half of these agencies that he's referring to, but they're all integral in making this all come about. So I actually sat at a meeting with Chris in 2019, November of 2019. He alerted me to the meeting. I went and I sat next to him because I was really curious about it. And it was for the site that has now reemerged, according to Chris, at Harlem River Yards, right on the river. They're going to sort of reestablish the river, make the community more of with a lot of retail, hotel, proper housing, classrooms in the stadium for the local students. And it's really, when I originally saw the plans on the site at this meeting, I was like, wow, this would be cool. And it's very close to Yankee Stadium. But it's not the other one that's only a couple blocks from Yankee Stadium. That seems to be done. Now this other one in the Bronx is up at Willets Point in Queens, over there next to Citi Field. I don't know. I think that's still in there, but so this latest thing from Chris Campbell saying that he has seen some documentation that would suggest that it's kind of back on the table and maybe there's some movement there. So I don't know. By the end of the year, if they don't have something by the end of the year, which could well be the case, it's going to really start wearing thin. It already has on supporters, and But if they keep winning MLS Cups, I guess maybe they'll be forgiven.
Absolutely, 100%. But, I know New York City fans always get joked on, oh, you're sharing a stadium with New York Redbulls. You guys still don't have a stadium. I mean, I feel like fans don't realize how hard it is to, one, build a brand new stadium in New York City and all that. And so I'll definitely in the show notes leave a report to Chris's article about a new potential stadium for New York City, and for all the listeners to check that out. But switching from Ronny Deila to Nick Cushing, he's a former Manchester City's women's coach. He won the league title in 2016, I believe, and only conceded 4 goals in 16 games. I think I read that correct, maybe not. 3 times Women FA Cup champions winner, 2 times Women's League Cup winner. This guy has had a lot of success in the Manchester City group with the women's team, and then he comes on board in 2020 as an assistant, I believe, under Ronny Deila, and now gets a chance to manage the first team. And I know I saw the players come out over the weekend and say, yeah, nothing's changed much between Ronny and Nick's system. We're playing a very similar style, and I think that's, as supporters for New York City, that's all you can ask, is not a complete tear down rebuild, because if something's working, why go away from that?
Well, look, if you get hired on a Monday and you've got a game on Sunday, you're not going to reinvent the wheel. You're just not going to do it anyway. If you have different ideas, you are not going to introduce them the week before that game. And I'm talking about the Colorado game that ended 1-1. You still don't have time to introduce really much new by the Wednesday game against the New York Redbulls in the U.S. Open Cup, which you lose 3-0. So you've got a game where you were down 1-0. Tyler Magno scores the equalizer, 1-1 Colorado. Okay, you get out with a point. And now the loss to the Red Bulls, your rivals, in a game where really they were just dismantled the second half, lacked discipline. Not only did Thiago get red carded, but Maxi Morales got red carded at the end of the game, as did Tom Edwards. By the way, you were a long time ago, you were referring like who started things. Tom Edwards, he's check out film on him. He's a guy, he's always got a puss on his face. He never seems to be happy. He's an agitator. He starts things up, and he's the kind of guy you like having on your side, but you hate him if he's the opponent. But anyway, and I'm not saying Maxi Morales should have gone after him after the game. I'm just saying he's an interesting guy, old Tom Edwards. So there's that discipline. So all of a sudden, Nick Cushing has to address some things. Number one is they haven't created many opportunities in either of these 2 games, and you're coming off an 8-game unbeaten run. Now you're 9 unbeaten in MLS play, but you're coming off this difficult Red Bulls game. So the game on Sunday against Philadelphia, I think, is pretty big for Nick Cushing personally. It's when you're an interim, and he's interim, so he's also trying to prove himself. And I think they have every belief, David Lee and the City Football Group, that Nick Cushing is their guy. There's no question that's one of the reasons they brought him over to assist Ronny Deila. He's been in the City Football Group for 16 years. 16 years, starting with as a volunteer of 7-year-olds
Wow.
to his current position now in New York City FC. He won 6 trophies with the Manchester City women. And if anybody wants to poo-poo that he was coaching women, don't do it. When you're managing a team, it's all very similar. When you're dealing with women, yes, there are some things you have to do that maybe dealing with men is a little differently. There's no question about that. But I think in some ways coaching women prepares you to coach men as well, because you always think guys are tough. They don't need, no, guys want to be communicated with too, and managing in a manner that you cater to the person has become something that's so vital. It's something Jim Curtin does so well. It's one of the reasons he's so successful with Philadelphia. And then at the highest level, Carlo Ancelotti with a Champions League at Real Madrid, you could say, well, they got that. No, it's his relationship with his players, man. Pep Guardiola, same thing with Man City. Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. I mean, these guys know how to handle their players and teams. And, that's the important thing. New York City thinks that, and City Football Group thinks that Nick Cushing is the guy that can do it. But results will dictate that. And, coming up Sunday, it's a huge match for him in New York City.
Yeah, it is a huge match, and not only for New York City, but for Philadelphia too, because
Sure.
we're talking about all the draws that Philadelphia Union have. either off the air or before during when we were recording, can't remember. I'm sure we'll bring it up again, but New York City, they're returning to Subaru Park, like I said in the intro, for the first time since beating the Union in the Eastern Conference Finals, in a game that is still in the back of the mind of many, many Union fans. I mean, I see them on social media talk about it all the time in the stadium. You talk to Union fans, they're like, yeah, they're looking forward to when New York City comes back because they want revenge. And yeah, I know this isn't the same as an Eastern Conference Final where you're being the MLS Cup Final. If you win the game, it's just another regular season game. But, the fans definitely want this. And even when we played you guys in Yankee Stadium this year, the players were asked, is this a revenge game? How do you guys feel? Like now there's just another game and everything. But, in the back of their mind, those Union players want to avenge what happened to them or something that was out of their control with 11 starters or something getting COVID where they couldn't play. But, yeah, I mean, we're due for a great game.
Well, that first game at Yankee Stadium was a bit different, and Philadelphia wins it 2-0, and they deserve it. But anybody can, if you want to term this an excuse, fine. But I was traveling with the team, and during the early portion of the season, first of all, preseason they were all over. Then they started CONCACAF Champions League. Remember, they won MLS Cup, and 3 weeks later they're back in preseason. I mean, it was. You could say what you want about all this, but that team against Philadelphia, I have never seen them so, how should we say, they were just exhausted. It was an exhausting performance at home. They didn't have anything going, and they had just been in Guatemala City where, they lost to Taty Castellanos 4-2 after they were up 2-1, and you could see it then. They were up 2-1 in this game. They advanced in CCL on aggregate, but Taty Castellanos, man, if that game was 5 minutes longer, I don't know. It might not have gone well. And then just 4 days later, they're playing Philadelphia, and they were just trying to sort it all out. And so again, Philadelphia deserved the win. I don't see that match as being really dictating in any way what's going to happen on Sunday. Not at all, man.
That's a good point that you bring up because the first goal that the Union scored in that game was off of a set piece. And New York City were late to the ball and everything. And the Philadelphia Union noticed as the game was going on that, set pieces might work against New York City. And you're right. I mean, 4 days, you're all the way down south flying from Guatemala to New York City. It's a lot of work.
And it was just after this stretch. So it was games on March 5th, March 8th, March 12th, March 15th, and then March 19th. And then March 19th was the Philadelphia game. So, there was a lot going on in there, and they, New York City wasn't playing particularly well, and they just couldn't do, part of, like Philadelphia, the modern game has become, press, counter press. And while New York City isn't always in your grill, in your end of the field, they are a team that relies on pressure to win the ball back and, get those easy opportunities. And they just didn't have it in them to that same level. But it is also teams with contrasting styles. Philadelphia they're very comfortable out of possession. New York City, if they don't have 60% of the ball, they think it's been a bad game. So that's the other, it makes for an interesting matchup.
It does, for sure. And I think, real quick, just going back to the MLS Cup, one thing that I don't see talked about enough on social media or on podcasts and stuff is that, leading up to the playoffs, New York City went three wins, 2 draws. And you were talking about Sean Johnson the second half of the season up until now, that he's been the best goalkeeper in MLS. But during that stretch to get into the playoffs, New York City, they outscored their opponents 11-3. I mean, they were on fire. And I know they had a game, I think, against DC United that they won 5-0, 6-0. But, I mean, everything was clicking for this team offensively, defensively, and they just kept riding that momentum in the playoffs. And you saw them come up from behind against New England. You saw them, who else? Philadelphia Union, they went behind in. And, no, it was Philadelphia Union and Portland they went behind in those games, and they won both of those games. So, yeah, I mean, this New York City team, it's not like, okay, well, they got lucky. No, they were hot heading into the playoffs, and it doesn't matter what sport it is. All sports, the teams that do well in the playoffs are the teams that are ending the regular season hot, and that's what New York City were doing. And I know you saw this stat by OptaJack they put out on Twitter the other day where Sunday's meeting between New York City, 9 straight games undefeated, and the Philadelphia Union, 8 straight, will be the 6th match in MLS history between two teams on an 8+ game unbeaten run, and the first since 2011. these two teams don't like each other. 23 yellow cards, 2 red cards in the last 5 games. That's a ton of yellow cards. Neither team has scored more than 2 goals in the last 5 meetings. The Union, they're 2-2-1 in the last 5. But, New York City, they won't care about that. They got the all-important win in the Eastern Conference Finals. And one thing that surprised me is Taty only has 2 goals in 5 matches against Philadelphia. And I felt like he had a lot more. But, only 2 goals.
Yeah, but one of them was monumental on decision day. That headed goal, which it became the equalizer, and that set New York City into the playoffs on a good note and securing a home game. That was the most important part of that. And Taty scoring that goal secured the Golden Boot. A lot of good things happened there. But the New York City season turned around in one moment, and no question about it, because they were in a rut. They had a 10-game rut where they had only gotten 1 result in 10 matches. And here they are in Atlanta, and they're down a goal late in the game, and they get a free kick. I think it's the 90th minute. I guess I should know this, but I think it was the 90th minute. And Gudmundur Thorarensen, a left-footed fullback who's no longer with the club, his contract was not renewed, or the option declined, or whatever the MLS term is. And he struck a free kick goal past Guzan that sent the team, the club, everybody in the organization into delirium, because there was a lot of pressure. And going into that game against Atlanta in late October, it appeared that New York City might not even get in the playoffs. But that set them, they didn't lose another game the rest of the year. I think it was 6 more regular, and then however many in the playoffs, didn't lose a game the rest of the way. And it was on that one moment that turned the season around, a moment, because they were a good side. And that's proof that your mental health is very important in athletics.
Yeah.
And this is a team that was shot going into that game. And when they scored that goal, it just like this, whatever renewal you can have emotionally, they had in that. And that's the wonderful part about athletics. It really is, because it wasn't anything about the tactics. No. They got that jolt, and they never let up after that. It just gave them some freedom, and they played so well the rest of the time.
Absolutely. And, you can argue, from that moment up until now, they've been the best team in MLS. I know some people want to say LAFC. Union fans probably want to say, oh, that's us. But, I have no problem saying that New York City's been the best team in the Eastern Conference, the best team in MLS since that moment last season. I mean, they're a terrific team where they have good defenders, they have good midfielders, good attackers, they have options off the bench. I mean, how many teams in MLS can you see them bringing in a player like Thiago Andrade? I know we talked, he hasn't impressed like Talis Magno has, but so many teams in MLS would kill to have a player like him, or Pereira just come off the bench, make a difference. Eber is a proven MLS player, scored crucial goals for New York City. Not many teams in MLS have the type of options off the bench like New York City do.
Yeah, and that's important. Until Ronny Deila got those attacking reinforcements early last year. I'll never forget Tony Rocha early in the season in 2021. He had to put him in at striker. I forget where the game was, but it was on the road, and it was like that. If there was anything more, clear and concise in terms of what they needed, it was Tony Rocha playing striker at the end of the game, because either somebody got injured or he had to make the substitution. And but that's when Magno, Thiago, and Santi Rodriguez, who's a wonderful player, 22 years old, Uruguayan, those 3 have certainly made a difference in what's happened in New York City.
Absolutely. And I think Rodriguez, he's on loan. I don't see how New York City doesn't pick up that loan if they have the option to, because you're right. I mean, he's been a terrific player for New York City this season. But one thing I keep pointing out on Twitter, and I'll say it here on the podcast too, is that New York City are such a dominant team in the second half. And we were talking off air how the Philadelphia Union announced Friday, today, I guess, is when you guys are listening to the podcast. That's when Jim Curtin's press conference would be, because I really want to ask them about some of these stats, and I'll get the opportunity Friday, but you guys just won't hear on the podcast his thoughts on that. But New York City, 15 goals for, which is tied 4th most in MLS, 5 goals against in the second half, which is second fewest in MLS. I mean, so dominant. My question to you is, I didn't look that deep in, but has that always been like the philosophy for New York City? Because I looked even farther where not only have New York City been good in the second half of the season, but when New York City come to Subaru Park, 8 out of their 11 goals have all come in the second half, with 3 out of 8 of those goals scored being game winners. Like, just looking at those stats, it looks like New York City's more of a second half team than they are a first half team.
Yeah, I don't know the stats specifically, over the years in regard to that, but I would just say they're a better team in the second half now because they're just more professional, meaning they know how to hold on to a lead if they have a lead. So there have been many instances over the years where they surrendered a lead, or if it was tied, they would they'd lose all the points at times in the second half because they weren't disciplined. And that's as early in 2019. I still think that was like maybe their best team when you watch them play soccer. And to me, that's important. I like watching the game a certain way, and that's just who I am. And they played, and Domi Torrent was the coach, Pep Guardiola's assistant for 12 years. So he taught positional play and the movement of the players and how they could adjust during the course of a game. It was really a wonderful thing to watch. But they lacked some of that second half discipline, and that's why they didn't advance maybe as far as they could have. So I think under Ronny Deila, they've understood. They've just been more professional. That's the way I would put it.
And Union fans, I would say, would hope that the Union can take a note out of New York City's book because, in the first half, 11 goals for the Union compared to the 9 goals for in the second half, 4 goals against in the first half compared to 7 goals against. I'll also mention in the intro, these are the 2 teams in MLS that have given up the least amount of goals with 11. And so the Union just, it doesn't matter. It's like the second half, they're a completely different team than they are in the first half. They can't get that second goal. It's like 11 out of 15 games, they're getting the first goal. And then they don't get a second goal to go up by 2 goals. And so I think...
Well, you need goal scorers. What about this guy, Ule? Ule. How do I pronounce his name?
Ua.
I need to know that. Ua.
Yeah.
Ua. Okay, yes. I need to know that by Sunday so that I, give him full credit. But what's going on with him?
Yeah, I know. Like, fans are getting a little bit annoyed. And I'm like, people I'm seeing on social media calling him a bus. And I'm like, oh, you can't be calling this guy a bus.
I think that's too early. Yeah, it's too early for that. But I'm just wondering what your assessment is.
I think...
Look, they're not getting the second goal because they don't have goal scorers. It's really simple to me. You have to have reliable goal scorers. So you had Shabilko in the past. So now you don't. And and I think that there was the way Ernst Tanner and Jim Curtin have managed this whole thing over the last 3 years, I think has been exceptional. But they've been left a little short in the goal scoring department. I think they're probably a little surprised by that. I don't know what they say individually, but it's you need goal scorers.
Yeah, right. 100%.
If Taty Castellanos is gone during the transfer window, is Tyler Magny your striker? Is he going to be the reliable goal scorer? I don't know. Eber, who has not been able to regain the form that he had in 2019 before he did his ACL, and now he's that much older, 3 years older, and is fully recovered, but it just hasn't looked like the same kind of player. So who's scoring the goals for New York City if Castellanos is gone? Yeah, you're not getting that second goal either, maybe. And therefore you're not, advancing through the playoffs and getting to the MLS Cup championship. So, yeah, the people scoring the second goal are the goal scorers. And if you don't have them, then it gets tough. And I'm sure that's why you have all these draws.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you asked what's been the issue with Mikel, and I would say he's just not on the same page with his teammates coming from Brøndby, the Danish league, where he told us he likes getting in behind. And we've seen him and his teammates just been off the page multiple times where he wants to make a certain run, the teammates don't pick it out, or the timing's just off and he's caught offsides. He was caught offsides twice against Cincinnati over the weekend where, he was isolated 1-on-1 against the center back and then just the ball didn't come when he was expecting it. We've seen him against Montreal get in 1v1 situations. We've seen, I forget who else, but, he has the speed to get in behind. But the timing's off. I think the pace of the league may be throwing him off a little bit. And he's missed a good amount of the season, too, because he was dealing with visa issues, couldn't get in with the team properly and train, was injured.
No, that's very important, especially somebody, coming from out of the country. I think we underestimate the adjustment period for those players. Then I could go to New York City and talk about Tyler Spagno and Thiago. Santi Rodriguez, he's a different sort, man. He came in and it looked like he'd been here for a while. But the other two Brazilians, Tyler and Thiago, not the case. They struggled early on. It took them some time. They're young, new country. They don't speak a lick of English. But they had Eber there to help them through and guide them a little bit. But don't ever underestimate that, whether it's a player or a coach coming, in the middle of the season, which is happened not frequently, but has happened. It takes a lot of time to adjust. Alfredo Morales came in and he didn't come mid-season, but because of COVID, he didn't have his family here. He didn't have an apartment. He didn't have time to do all these things. And he didn't play great soccer early on. And you look back and you go like, yeah, well, the guy's life is disrupted right now. And, the force of family, I don't think you can underestimate that either. If you don't have your family around, you're not seeing your kids. I mean, it's those are things that we don't think about enough, that these people are human. That goes back to our discussion, why Curtin's successful, why Sir Alex was successful, Klopp, Guardiola, Ancelotti, Ronny Deila. These guys, they're about the people. They really are.
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't have said that any better. But what are you looking forward to this weekend? I know we talked about the Taty versus Jose Martinez matchup. I'm definitely looking forward to that myself. But just what else?
I'm looking forward to a space to broadcast from that has internet, a monitor where I could see replays, and that we're someplace where I can plug into the natural television effects, which really sound great on a radio broadcast, and enough room so that we're not quite this compact. So I'm teasing a little bit because we go back to stadium construction, and look, Subaru Park is it's a fun facility. The view over the Delaware, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's really nice. But we all know the story that they didn't really construct it exactly the way they would have liked. The surrounding neighborhood hasn't been resurrected exactly like they wanted because of dollars, because of money. And the press area is a little wanting at times, but it's still a cool soccer-specific stadium where a lot of great events have been held, national team events, and so I'm really looking forward to it. I do like the sight lines and being able to go and do a game there. So I look forward to every game. I really do, because it's such a privilege just to be able to call a live broadcast of a professional soccer match, Todd, and so I'll just have fun with it either way.
Yeah, I agree. I say it all the time. Every time I have a commentator on, I say, you guys have the best seat in the house, calling the game, seeing what you see right in front of your eyes, painting a picture for the listeners, whether it's on TV, whether it's through radio like you do. You guys.
And what's great about radio, too, is that if you screw up and call the wrong name, doesn't matter. They can't see it anyway. So you just so we're forgiven even when we make our mistakes. Hopefully we don't make the wrong goal call.
Yeah.
And at Yankee Stadium, that's a challenge, man, because you're behind home plate in the far corner of the field. Maxi Morales is 5'3". I can't even see him.
Yeah, hopefully you guys get a stadium sooner rather than later. But real quick, I'll give my 3 keys to the game, and then I'll let you out of here, Glenn. But number one, don't let your foot off the gas pedal once you score. We talked about it. 7 blown leads this season, which is second most in MLS. The Union have scored the first goal in 11 out of 15 of their games, and have only scored 2 goals in 6 games this season. 4 of those, they've won the games by 2 goals. 2, I think they've got to contain New York City in the second half. I went over the stats with New York City in the second half, so no need to go over those again. And then number 3, just use your speed to get in behind New York City's defense. We talked about Mikel Ua, how he's just off with his teammates, how he wants to make runs in behind the center backs. He had the opportunities against Cincinnati, caught off sides. Early on against Colorado, the center backs let Colorado in behind. Fortunately for New York City, they didn't give up a goal. But, I think opportunities will be there, and it's always down to slim margin. So it's like, make the most of your opportunities, and hopefully the Union can hit on 2 out of 3 of those. But I know we'll get a terrific game this weekend. And like I said, if we get 0-0, I will be shocked.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that. But I'm going to steal that statistic that Philadelphia scored the first goal in 11 of 15 games. That's interesting. And certainly, some stats are like, come on. But that's a good one. That's a good one, and it's something for them to play off of and work on a little bit. But it might be the infiltration of another goal scorer during the summer transfer period. We'll see what Ernst Tanner can come up with.
Yeah, I know they just signed Chris Donovan from Union too, and I know that's not the striker that Union fans were hoping for. And I don't know, maybe they offload a striker, bring in another one, but I don't know. That's 4 strikers, and that Ernst Tanner's brought in this season, and fans were just hoping to get at least one. So 4, that's definitely a lot with Mikel, Julian, Jose Riasco, who's with Union 2, who fans have high expectations for, but he hasn't got too much playing time with Union 2. He's supposed to be this big deal in Venezuela. I've had my friend who covers Venezuelan soccer say, yeah, he compares him to Solomon Rondon, who's over in Europe. I was like, is he like Joseph Martinez? He said, no, he's more like Solomon Rondon, but he's not getting the options to play much with Union too. So the Union go ahead and give Chris Donovan, a guy who played 4 years of college soccer with the Drexel Dragons in Philadelphia, and I don't think he's the proven goal scorer that Union fans were hoping for. If he can make
you never know.
Spark, you're right. You don't know.
And you can't argue with the success of the academy. And you look like a guy like Brian White, who came through Red Bulls too, and then is out of Vancouver and is like their talisman now. You just never know. You never know.
You're right. But Glenn, thanks so much for coming back onto the podcast. And as always, where can listeners find you on social media?
Just my name, at Glenn Crooks. I have Instagram too, crooks.glenn. I just put my tip of the day up there. I'm not a very good Instagrammer, so you might not find it that entertaining. But the tips I think are pretty good. So go. And they're on the Twitter also. And outside of that, SiriusXM FC is a 24/7 soccer channel. SiriusXM is a subscription service. So I can't just tell you, go out and spend your $18.99 a month. But it's got all these other channels. So for me, it's Howard Stern, the E Street channel, and the soccer channel. And that's all I need, man. That's all I need.
That is. Anything else planned you have coming up on the coaching academy?
Well, let's see. The most interesting, I would say this, and these things all get archived. This was a good one. You should go back and listen to this one. I had Alex Chilowitz on for the hour, for the entire show. He's an MLS referee. He just did his 70th match last weekend, and Colorado San Jose. I think it was 2 weekends ago. And no, Real Salt Lake San Jose. Well, it doesn't matter. But he's an interesting dude. So he's a young guy. He's in his 30s, but he's become this accomplished referee in MLS and also CONCACAF. He's sent to competitions there. But he's an accomplished musician, composer, and band leader. No. And he contributed to the walkout song in MLS. You know what the music when the players walk out? Hans Zimmer, right? He helped write the music for that.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's pretty wild. And it turns out he's from Jersey. We knew a lot of the same people. So really an excellent conversation. So if you do have SiriusXM, search Alex Chilowitz and it'll pop up, and for your next walk around the neighborhood, go ahead.
There you go. Sounds like a great episode. But Glenn, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast, and best of luck this weekend on the call.
You too, man.
Yeah, and if you aren't following the podcast on social media, you can go ahead and follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. And be sure to check out the website, thefreekick.net. I'll be sure to write a match preview for this upcoming game against New York City. I'll include some of Jim Curtin's pregame comments since you guys are going to get them for this episode. But yeah, it's going to be a fantastic game against New York City this weekend. I'm sure of it. Going to be a hot one, so make sure you guys stay hydrated. And I was going to say, I'm glad I didn't forget about this. So I don't know if I'll do a match recap of this game against New York City or not, because after the Union take on New York City, they go and play Chicago on Wednesday night. And so I really want to get Tyler Terrans on the podcast. And so I feel like that might be a little bit too much for you guys to do a podcast on Monday and then a podcast for you guys to listen to on Tuesday. But I don't know, maybe I'll be able to get them both done. But that's what I have planned, hoping that I can get Tyler Terrans back on the podcast. He's a joy to talk to, one of the best commentators in MLS. And I've always enjoyed our conversations him and I have had. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.